One day, Jesus was preaching inside a house. There were so many people that wanted to listen to him that the house was completely filled. A man that could not walk heard that Jesus was in town. He also knew that Jesus had the power to heal people. Therefore, he wanted to see Jesus, and his friends helped him. They tried to get him to Jesus, but just as the house was so full of people, there was no way to get him through. So, thinking about what they could do, they came up with a crazy plan. They took their lame friend to the roof of the house and started to make a hole in the roof. Once it was big enough, they lowered their friend down to Jesus on a board. When Jesus saw this, he was impressed by the great faith of the lame man and said to him, "Your sins are forgiven." There were some scholars in the room that focused on studying God's written law. These were the scribes. They got angry because from their point of view, only God himself had the right to forgive sin. Jesus knew what they were thinking, so he asked all of his listeners a question. What is easier to say? Your sins are forgiven, or get up and walk? I will show you now that my power to forgive sin comes from God. Then he turned to the man and told him, "Get up and walk." Immediately he was able to stand and walk again. He picked up his mat and praised God for his healing and walked around. Everyone who saw this miracle was thrilled and praised God.
One day, Jesus met a man named Matthew. Matthew was a tax collector. The people didn't like him, since he collected money for the Romans who ruled over them. Jesus asked Matthew to follow him. Immediately, Matthew stood up from his booth and left it behind to join Jesus. He invited Jesus and his friends, the disciples, to a dinner at his home. There were also a lot of other tax collectors there, and other people with bad reputations sitting and eating with them. When the Jewish leaders saw this, they asked Jesus, "Why do you spend time with these kinds of people?" Jesus answered, "Healthy people don't need a doctor, but sick people do. I have come to lead people back to God who are far away from him. I have come to save the lost."
Some people asked Jesus why his followers weren't fasting like others. Jesus explained that it's like a wedding. Guests don't fast when the groom is with them. But one day, he will be gone, and then they will fast. He also said that new things, like fresh cloth or new wine, don't fit with old things. Just like you wouldn't put new wine in old wineskins, some things need to be done in a new way.
One day, Jesus and his friends, whom he called disciples, went through a field on the Sabbath. The Sabbath is the weekly Jewish holiday, and people are not supposed to work on that day. Instead, they would gather, celebrate, and listen to the writings of the Holy Scriptures. Some of the religious leaders saw that the disciples were taking some corn from the field to eat, as they were hungry. They confronted Jesus, saying, "It is illegal to work on the Sabbath. How, then, can your disciples harvest crops today? Do you remember the old story of our former King David? Before he became king, he was in a bad situation and had to hide inside a house that belonged to God. And as he was inside that house, which he was not supposed to be in because it was a holy place, he did even worse. He and his companions were hungry and ate the bread that was offered to God and was not allowed to be eaten either. Was God angry with them? Did he punish or even confront them for doing so? No. Jesus concluded, God made the Sabbath for people to celebrate and be happy about their free day, not to make life more difficult for them.